Hi, everybody. I'm here with Dancia, one of my favorite storytellers.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Dancia and I met in a storytelling class, and the best. And in that class, we told mostly personal stories.
We did.
But I am kind of hoping you get
a fiction
one.
Okay.
Because I just want to hear what you do with it.
Me too. I totally want to hear what I do with it too.
All right, so let's see. Okay, we're playing with format today, and I am going to pick words for Dancia's story. So the first word is going to be green. G-R-E-E-N. And the second word is going to be pile. P-I-L-E. Okay, and will you pick a triangle, please?
How about this one?
Okay, this one. Something from history, but it could be fiction or nonfiction.
Okay.
So it just has a historical setting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sure.
Green, pile, something from history. Dancia's going to think
I'm going to think about it for a minute.
Yeah.
Or two.
Exactly, and then we'll be right back.
So everybody knows about the Yellow River in China, but where our hero, or heroine, I should say, comes from, was not close to the Yellow River, but they did have like this little rivulet almost that if the light hit it just right, it would look almost like green, like jade or emeralds or precious things that they'd only heard of but didn't have. And this is where Mulan grew up. And she, as you may know, was one of two daughters. And so being one, the dad not having any sons, they ended up having to do all the chores in the house, and they were not wealthy, so they had to do everything. They had to, wash and clean and cook, and they had to chop the wood and create huge piles of firewood, and to be burned through the winter to keep themselves warm. So it was a simple existence, and they fulfilled, like many, I think, daughters of fathers who wanted sons, they fulfilled many of those kind of filial requirements. And so in addition to kind of these things, they really had only like two prized possessions. One was a jeweled comb, and one was the dad's sword. And so one of the kind of son-like activities that they would do would be to spar with their dad. So they would fashion wooden swords out of their firewood and spar with their dad. And that's how they would spend their time. So it was a simple existence, but it was fun, and it was, heartwarming. Obviously, then, war came, and the father was going to go off to war and represent the family, because every family had to give a fighting son, usually, or male. And even though he was really too old to go, he was going to go. And as most of you may know, Mulan then decided to sneak away in the middle of the night to spare her father and to impersonate this man and go fight in her father's place. But this story is not really about Mulan. The story is about the sister that she left behind, Mu Yan. And Mu Yan was really pissed at Mulan for leaving. And, so Mulan gets all the glory. She's she's the perfect elder daughter. She takes on the familiar responsibilities. As much as her dad and her mother were like scared stiff about her, they were protective of her. They were proud of her. She was going to bring pride and honor to the family. And here's Mu Yan, like, left at home, like, well, what do I do? So she was left with all the brunt of all the, taking care of everything at home. Suddenly, like, there was no more fun at home, no more sparring with dad. It was just like work, work, work. If she'd known about Cinderella, she might have likened herself to Cinderella, but since she didn't know about her, she just knew how difficult her life was. And she just resented Mulan. She tried to get over it, but she just couldn't. And, you know, when her mother started talking about her approaching marriageable age and the responsibilities that she was going to have to do to sort of further the family and the family line, she didn't actively think that, you know, she wasn't going to do that, but she was just as rebellious as Mulan. She just didn't have an outlet or an avenue and no way to kind of bring her story and her ability to life. So she didn't, you know, she felt so stuck. And so for many nights and weeks that turned into months, she just tossed and turned at night. She couldn't sleep until finally, you know, one morning she woke up before dawn, and there was just enough light just peeking out over the mountains, and she knew in her heart of hearts she had to leave. So she packed her very few belongings and she just took off. She didn't know where she was going. She walked for 3 days and 3 nights, long after she'd finished all the food she had, and she was drinking water from like the leaves that she was passing. And you know, she finally came across this sort of deserted hillside and mountainside that had lots of crevices. And so she was scared, but she kind of found her way through, and she was looking around, and she found like this cave that somehow looked a little bit homey, and it was a little bit softer and a little bit more rounded inside, as though it might have been carved out by some water. And she made her home there, and she actually never left. She became this guru. It turned out there was a village just over the mountain, and they found her, and they considered her the wise old woman, and they came to her for all their advice. And she ended up guiding them wisely without being their ruler. But she found her own way to be rebellious. Maybe she didn't bring honor to her family, but she found her own path.
Thanks, Dancia, for that story.
Sure.
I just have to ask you, like, what is true of it?
What is
that we know?
That we know? Well, I know very little about Mulan's story to begin with. I know the nugget of Mulan is true. This girl or woman who goes off to fight in place of her father. That part I know is true. I don't really know anything else is true.
Like, do you know if she had a sister?
No.
Okay. Because when you told that story, I was like, oh, she had a sister. I had no idea. They didn't cover that in the movie.
I just figured, like, yeah, I don't know. I went with it. And it was very clear in my mind that she had a sister, but you know what? I have no idea. She probably doesn't.
You know, it's really interesting because I feel like this, you raised a lot of really interesting themes to me about, you know, when one sibling is more rebellious and one is more like observing of what they were raised to do. And then also whether the rebellious one ends up being considered in the long run the one who's stuck with actually serving the family interest more. So I don't know. It was. I was like, it's not a stretch to me that she had a sister that we never heard about. Like I'm on
feel
board.
like there's so many stories, right, where there are other people involved and we never hear about them, right? So I wanted to sort of shed light on, you know, and then to your point, like maybe they're not considered to do anything valiant or interesting, but you know, who's to say? Who's to say?
And also, our perception of what's interesting or valiant changes over time, and probably changes based on what we need as individuals in life as well.
Sure.
And I loved the imagery of her like drinking the water from the leaves, and the cave that was carved out by water. Like it was just beautiful imagery.
Thanks. I thought it all came from that idea of green, so I just immediately, and maybe that green curtain there, but I had this image of like beautiful kind of green, almost like jade-like, and so that water, I think it subconsciously must have been going through my head as I was telling the story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Okay,
Cool.
well, will you help me figure out what story I'm going to
Absolutely.
tell?
Let's do it. Am I picking words for you?
You're picking words for me. Sorry, it's
Okay.
a little.
That's okay.
It needs a little.
I just need to try to make sure I
it.
don't. Yep.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right.
All right.
I'm going to start with rainbow.
Okay. Oh, I've done one with rainbow, and I love it.
Is that okay? Do we
Yes.
need to pick a different one?
No, we don't,
Okay.
because I think I used it in a very particular way. I think it could be
Okay.
used.
And I didn't count last time, so we're going to do it properly,
Okay.
so you can be
Proper.
sure. R-A-I-N-B-O-W.
Okay.
Electric.
Okay.
E-L-E-C-T-R-I-C. It's like a spelling test.
I know. That's why I felt it elaborate. Okay, I am going to go with I guess I'll go with I don't know, this one.
Okay. This one is, it's a love letter, nonfiction.
Okay. You know, what's funny is I got rainbow when I told another love letter.
Wow.
Okay, so just to describe this category, this is basically just saying words of appreciation to someone that you appreciate. Could be someone like I know personally, or someone like a celebrity or a politician or whatever. Okay, I'm gonna think about it, and we'll be right back. This is a love letter to Doug Henning. He was a famous magician. He had a lot of TV specials, and I really only know one of them very well. He's no longer alive, but when I was growing up, his career was very active. And in my house, we would sometimes like videotape something off of TV to rewatch. And the two things that I remember rewatching the most were Mary Poppins and Doug Henning's World of Magic, one of the specials. This special, my brother and I would watch very, very often. And my brother's older than I am, and he really loved that he could figure out how Doug Henning did these tricks. Magic is illusion, after all. And my brother loved to figure out how the illusion worked. And I loved to get lost in the illusion and to never find out if I didn't have to. So I'd get really annoyed when my brother would try to like tell me how it happened, because I was like, no, you'll spoil it. But there were many times that my brother and I would sit there and watch this particular special. In the special, he had many guests come on. He'd do lots of tricks, some of them with like rings of fire. One of them was pouring chocolate milk into different sized cups, and it seemed like the pitcher never ended. It was kind of actually like in Mary Poppins when she pulls stuff out of the carpet bag. That was like one of my favorite moments. That was another illusion I did not want spoiled for me. But with Doug Henning, the reason why I loved the world that he created so much, aside from that there's magic and it was beautiful and interesting, really what I loved about him was the way he spoke, the way he carried himself, the way he delighted in everything that he was doing. He was really like kind of a hippie magician, and he would wear these like spandex, bright colored outfits, like bright red and bright blue, and there would be sparkles on it like he was an ice skater or something. But his manner was also kind of like Bob Ross, another person I could have written this or said this love letter to today. What Doug Henning had was that sort of quiet joy and the ability to transmit that through his tricks, through his conversations, and just through how he set up the narrative of what he was doing. one of my favorite segments of the whole show was at the end. He and his wife are, it's no longer in the studio, and he and his wife are in a meadow, and he's riding a black horse and she's riding a white horse, and they tell a story in voiceover of a story of like a couple who was in love, but they were supposed to not be together. And through the illusion of the camera work and what they're doing, if I remember correctly, some magic happens and then all of a sudden they're riding together on a zebra. And there's like, I think there's a rainbow like poster board with them, or there's a rainbow in the background or something. And he used rainbows a lot as, you know, a lot of people sort of with his manner did to express like the beauty of the natural world. And there's so much love and sensitivity in the way he presented his illusion to fill everyone with delight. A couple years ago, I was reading about him and the story of how he and his wife met, and how even though he'd been doing magic for a while, it wasn't until he really met her that it kind of all moved forward in a bigger way, in a way that gave him a sense of purpose and brought even more love to the productions that he created, because they were productions. And but it was through that love that the two of them shared that they really expanded. And I think that, I mean, not to be so cheesy right now, but I do think that is kind of the biggest magic. It's not really an illusion. And it's an amazing thing that I feel like when I watched that special, I could see that in them. Like, even that personal connection conveyed through the medium of TV, through what's not natural, what is electric, but that you still really felt that connection and that softness that that he had. And I'll also say, like, it's not, to me, so usual of a thing to see a man take positions of real leadership with that kind of sensitivity and focus on love and rainbows and fairy tales and all that. And I just really admired that he did that. So for those reasons, I hope whoever of his family is around can hear this, that I just think that Doug Henning was, he wove a lot of magic, and it wasn't all illusion. So thank you, Doug Henning.
Talia, I loved that love letter. I thought it was so great because I don't know, it kind of, I remember watching magic shows as a kid and it took me to that, but I felt like the magic shows I watched were always big productions. And what you talked about was like, it was emotion, and I gotta imagine that made it feel more real.
Yeah, and there were a lot of segments in his specials that were like big and whatever, and I think there was the Harlem Globetrotters and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, it was very, and Billy Crystal was in this one. Like, there's a lot of bigness to it, but there are also transitions, and there are always moments of quiet and tenderness that, like, you don't really think of as part of that. You know, it's not like a sawing a body in half kind of thing, you know? Yeah. So I just loved that, and I loved that there is, you know, I don't think as a kid I was so aware of how much violence there was on TV. Like, I don't think that was a factor for me, but for me, when I love TV or when I love stories, it's usually because they're taking me somewhere I don't know how to go myself, you know? Right. And I felt like he really did that.
Oh, that's amazing. That's even more incredible. So he kind of like took you with him, like, to these amazing magical places, literally, but like in a safe way too.
Yeah.
in like a comforting way. I love
and
that.
by the way, his a lot of his specials are on YouTube now. So once in a while, I'll just like, if I'm like having a rough day, I'll just look it up and be like, a moment of peace. Thank you.
I feel like I have to go discover him because I don't think I'm familiar with him.
He's really. I put him in the like. To me, it's Doug Henning, Bob Ross, and Mr. Rogers are kind of like in the same area of like really like kind men who make you feel like there is the moment of peace here in this world.
Yeah, I think the idea that anybody might be put in the same bucket as Mr. Rogers is pretty awesome. So the fact that there might be more people like that just makes me happy.
I know.
Makes me happy.
Very happy.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was our show for today. Thanks so much for watching and hanging out with us.
We had a blast. Hope you did too.
Thank you, Dancia, for being on the show and telling us your stories.
It was so much fun. Thanks for having me.
So much fun. Bye.
Bye.